Alright, here we go. There's another live reading of Withered Kingdom by its author, me, Nathan Orgel. Trying to come into these videos with a little more energy than usual. I have no idea if that's coming off right at all. But hope everything's been going as relatively okay as things could in the last week since I last live streamed. I know world events have been incredibly chaotic and unexpected. My cat might try to jump onto the table right now. Hold on. You got it? Okay. Sorry if my camera's shaky because of that. Misty might try to get into frame here. She's interested in my light that I'm using to kind of balance out how my face looks. Hi, Misty. What are you doing? Don't knock over my camera, okay? She's too short to show up. She's a very small cat. I don't see anyone on yet. So, just some review for when this gets recorded later. I have read through the prologue of my book. I'm reading out of one of the pre-production copies here. So if you do see the copy of it, or the cover of it, and you see that the title's a little different, it's just because it's an older copy before the official publication began for the softcover. So I read the overture of the book, and I read through the first few parts. Gia woke up on this planet called Phyron, and he's kind of wrapped up in this war. A general half-giant, or a half-giant who is a general in one of the warring nations' armies, befriended him and decided to plead his case before his king. And it ended up coming to a trial where Gia ended up fighting the king's kind of number one right-hand man. And that fight ended with Gia being accepted by the people. He kind of won the trial. It was not to the death, but it was one where he won the public's favor, and because of that, he's able to go on to be able to be free if he can get through 1 year of mandatory military service. So that's kind of what he's facing right now. My cat's trying to bump the camera. Hi. Can you not? Sit down, please. Misty is rarely this curious, but apparently if I start talking to my own phone, she starts to get really curious about things and jumpy. Perhaps it's also that time. It's 6 o'clock. Sun is just barely gone down, and that seems to be a time when cats get more active, or at least that's when people get more active, and maybe that's what gets cats more active. I don't know. So I'm picking up in the story after Gia has been accepted by the people. He has beaten Polaris in combat in front of the people, and the king accepts him, and Gia is being sent to travel with General Nova, his half-giant friend. And yeah, that's where it's picking up here. So this is still scene 1. If you've ever read in the book, I divide things up by scenes, and then the scenes are divided into parts. So this is called scene 7, Cells. I have to go tend to something quick. Get your name in the records or we will be short on provisions, Nova said to Gia and walked away. The morning had come like a wink. Gia was standing by himself in front of another weapon rack, trying to decide what to take with him or request in the future. He was thumbing the end of a sword and was about to pick it up when he felt something was off. He felt like turning around, but ignored the feeling. The amnesiac was too late and saw the flash of a jacketed arm reach over his face and clamp around his mouth. He tried to make some kind of noise to get Nova's attention, but he and all the other soldiers were out of the armory, and a few more arms wrapped up Gia's limbs and pulled him away. His kidnappers took him into the dungeon through a secret path hidden in the castle corridors. A thick black cloth dropped down over his eyes, preventing him from memorizing the way back, or even which side door they went through. Then everything like mold. They carried him low, making his ankles knock on a few stairs going downward. They rounded a corner, and the amnesiac knew right away he was back in the dungeon. He didn't think he was stupid enough to get surprised like this, but after all that, he was going to run. Did I just lose video? Do I still have a connection? I hope I still have a connection. Still says live. It's very unusual for this phone to not have a very good connection. I'll go back. Top of page 82. His kidnappers took him into the dungeon through a secret path hidden in the castle corridors. A thick black cloth dropped down over his eyes, preventing him from memorizing the way back, or even which side door they went through. Then everything smelled like mold. They carried him low, making his ankles knock on a few stairs going downward. They rounded a corner, and the amnesiac knew right away he was back in the dungeon. He didn't think he was stupid enough to get surprised like this, but after all that, he was going to rot in a dungeon after all. Gia stopped struggling and thought about where they were taking him. He thought he should have arrived at his old cell, but they kept moving. They brought him down steps. Cold sweat of anxiety bunched up on his temples. After what felt like double the distance he expected, his captors set him down on a chair and yanked the cloth off his face. The first thing he saw was a man wearing a mask, and a few Phyronian soldiers in black cloaks who hid their faces under hoods. The mask was black and covered all the face underneath. It looked like it was made of greased feathers, like the feathers of a raven or a crow. "I believe you, Gia," the masked man said with a deep, familiar voice, and made the amnesiac more confused. "One of the heavenly ones has come to us at last." "Are you going to kill me?" Gia wet his lips. "No, I'm going to protect you. There's more going on than you know." "I'm not an angel." Gia half laughed through it. "Why does everyone keep telling me that?" "There are many who want you dead. They cannot reach you here, so stay put. You'll be treated like a prince, but you must not leave these walls or he will find you." "He? He who?" "You haven't heard him? In your dreams?" "I don't know what you're talking about." "Listen very carefully to me right now. He will come to you eventually, but don't listen to anything he says. Beware the voice that calls out from the ice. Nova will come looking for me. You can't expect this to work. You are safer here than anywhere else. I can get you anything you want if you promise me you will stay here until it's safe again. If you're a Phyronian, you're acting against the king's orders if you won't let me serve. You're protected by more than just men and stone in these depths. There is more power here than you know." The masked man turned his back. "Your engravings? Yeah, I've seen them. That's how you hold casters against their will." A deep grunt Gia interpreted as a laugh came from under the mask. He and his black-clad assistants locked the door to the cell and left as quickly as they had kidnapped him from the armory. Gia was alone again, in a cell. The subterranean air was as cold as metal and damp like an old rag. It felt like there were worms everywhere and other crawling or squirming things lurking all around him. The light of the torches disappeared around a corner, but he was still able to see by the light of his own aura. Still it was weak, and he needed rest. He found a block of wood he could use as a low chair to keep from sitting on the ground and set it up. That was a start, he thought, but he wasn't about to start sleeping on the ground here tonight. No matter how tired he was. He didn't even get breakfast yet, and it felt like the whole day was over already. It wasn't just the darkness or the cold. That's right, Gia thought. The ground. The ground was covered in dirt, but he thought there might be another engraving under it, So he put his weight on the wood block and slid it backward. With a few pushes of his hands, the floor underneath was one solid slab of stone. Sure enough, he found the same symbols and circles he remembered from the other cell. The cell walls were made out of pieces of stone, but they seemed to be set up against the natural dirt walls that remained from when the area was dug out. The stones were far too big to pull out, so he could... The stones were far too big to pull out for him to dig his way out. The bars of this cell were thick timbers placed close enough together that the wood block he had could not fit through. Idea after idea died out in his head. All he could think about was how old this place was. It was deeper than the other part of the dungeon, and the wood looked antique, but hard. The air was impossibly stale, but it didn't stink as much as sit heavily, and made him cough every few minutes. When would a meal come? He could easily go without lunch. All he was doing was sitting there. But by dinner time he knew his stomach would start to gnaw hard at his insides. He wished he had gone straight for the breakfast service area instead of the armory. How long had he been down there by now? It had to have been at least an hour, maybe 2. He had no way to pass the time. He tried to cast, just to see if it would work, but it didn't work. He couldn't even make his aura glow any brighter. There was nothing inside but dirt, his block of wood, and a waste bucket with a hole in it. He was considering pushing all the dirt in a pile and making a hole in the corner to put the bucket in. He thought he might need to use it until he heard something far away. The sound changed a few times until it became voices, and an odd moment of deep-voiced laughter that sounded demonic as it bounced off the stone walls. Then a door opened. He tried to get the angle of the wooden prison bars just right to see who was coming, but he knew who it was before he could see him. It was the same heavy armored boots that announced Aqua's approach before. "It's hard to see you like this," Aqua said, still in priestly vestments but without his scripture book. 2 hooded guards came in with him. "It's hard to see anything when I've been sitting in the dark." Gia covered his eyes from the light of the torches held by Phyronian guards that stood on either side of Aqua. One set a tray down on the ground and nudged it with his foot between the wood bars. Gia looked at the tray. It had a plate on it with a bowl of spiced rice in the middle and 2 skewers of shriveled meat on either side. He lifted the rice with his fingers into his mouth and savored the light herbal taste that followed. Before he could take another bite, the spices kicked in and burned the back of his throat in a delightful way. He took more of the rice and almost forgot about the meat. "I'm here to see how our chapel can serve you," Aqua said. One of the guards handed a torch to Aqua, then the 2 of them walked away slowly. "You're a terrible actor," Gia whispered as they left earshot, still chewing. "Just convincing enough. That's all I can ask for, honestly." "What kind of meat do you think this is?" Gia asked while picking a shred of meat from his front teeth. "I would say beef, but I haven't seen a single cow since I got here." "Wait, do you even know what a cow is? How much do you not know?" "A cow has horns, spots, and claws?" Gia waited for Nova's reaction. "Not claws, hoofs. How are you even functioning?" "Wow," Gia laughed. "Got you there." "Hey," Aqua's face brightened. "A sense of humor. Maybe you can teach your brother that someday." "My brother?" Aqua dropped his arms to his sides. "I didn't realize you forgot your brother. I should have known. I'm sorry." "I'm getting along well enough." "You're locked in a dungeon." Aqua outlined the cell with his fingertips. "I'll be out soon. Somebody's got to report me missing eventually." Gia ripped a piece of meat off in his teeth and took note of the texture. It was dry, but not like jerky. The seasoning that had dried into it filled his mouth with enough flavor to wake a sleeping man. It wasn't spicy, but so potent that it shocked his mouth and made him pucker slightly. Festival leftovers. Doesn't always taste this good. The salt is important. You may need it to stay healthy if we don't get anything but forage after we leave. Leave? Gia wiped a few grains off his face. You're going to help me break out? I suppose I told you enough. We need to find your brother. The only way you will ever remember your past is by bringing the old team back together. Team? I can't give you details. Believe me, it's hard for me, not just you. I have to look in the face of an old friend and see that he doesn't even know me. Friend. Have you been able to meet Nova yet? No. I followed some commotion to find you down here. I did all the detective work I could just to realize you hadn't even left the city with the general. We may have been friends, if you're really telling me the truth, but I think Nova's the only friend I have right now. You want your memories back, right? Of course. And you want to break free of this dungeon? Absolutely. Then I'll help you get out of here, but you must understand that your purpose, the whole reason you are here, depends on us finding the others. I don't even know who you're talking about, though. Listen, please, this is more important than anything. We need to find 2 other people. And one of them is my brother? Aqua licked his lips. Yes, but the other is just as important. We need to find both of them. For what? Aqua groaned. I can't just tell you. None of it will make sense and you won't believe me. I need you to believe me. What will you do if I just run away when you break me out of here? I can't decide your life for you. Nova flicked his neck to one side. He must be able to hear the guards coming back, Gia thought. But nothing at all is going to happen if you just stay here. Funny, the people who put me here said the opposite. How do I know you're not the one they're trying to protect me from? Look, Aqua flipped a fold of his robe open and pulled out a knife and kicked it through a gap in the vertical wood pillars until it stuck into a pile of dirt Gia had kicked up. They're coming back. Break the circuits in the seal, and we will get you out of here when we next meet. But you have to keep it hidden. Circuits? Heavens be with you. Aqua gave a small bow, then turned to wave a welcome hand to the guards after they entered the hallway. Then he turned his head to look at the knife and looked back and forth at Gia until Gia buried the knife. Thank you, priest, Gia said, and in a moment he was alone again. After hours and hours of sitting there, feeling his aura move around his body until it actually became a bit of a pastime. After hours and hours of sitting there, feeling his aura move around his body until it actually became a bit of a pastime. That's not the best sentence I've ever written. He couldn't cast, but he could still move his aura around. He was learning a lot about how it moved, how it passed parallel to major blood vessels, and naturally bunched up in certain places. It must have been dinner time, but when he finally heard a guard enter the tunnel to his cell, the guard didn't bring food. I did not realize my glade was going to sound that loud. The guard stood there with a mask on his face and just stared at Gia for a moment. Something about the mask and its shadows creaking in the torchlight struck a fear response deep in his stomach and made the hairs on the back of his neck rise up. Neither said a word, but Gia could eventually tell the guard's mouth was moving underneath the mask. That little movement was distracting enough that the amnesiac almost didn't notice the guard was reaching the torch between the wood pillars. He dropped the torch on the ground and slashed his hand open with a small knife, held the cloth in the same hand and dropped the bloody rag onto the torch flame, and it caught fire. The moment smoke rose up from the bloody rag, the guard ran out of the tunnel and the door slammed shut. Gia tried to follow him to the other corner of his cell, but couldn't see him through the thick wood pillars. When he looked back at the torch, it was burning purple fire where the blood was, and then the color took over all of the fire. "Help!" Gia cried for a moment, worried the fire would spread to the wood pillars and trap him behind the smoke. The fire grew quickly, as if it had a mind of its own. It climbed up from the side of the torch over 6 feet, but gave off no smoke. In the middle of the tower of violet flames, something took shape. It looked like an entire human body made out of glowing embers was forming. The crackling and shifting of the embers that made up the face of his body made it impossible to identify who it was. But its eyes opened. The clothing and all other identifying features were so obscured by a mist of smoke that kept cycling around the body without dispersing into the cell. I had to see you for myself. The mouth of the body opened and spoke. Its voice was garbled by the ash-like movement of the lips and throat, but it sounded like an adult male. The fallen one arrives at last. You don't know how many lifetimes I've waited. Who are you? Gia's jaw trembled more than he wanted. My name is Zio. You're the Emperor of Ornka, aren't you? Very good, fallen angel. What do you want? I am in want of nothing. All that is belongs to me. This cell, this castle, this country, and this world. But the King of Fyron, King Magillo, is but a setback. The last weed in my garden and the final gasp of a dying rodent in my constrictor grip. I have watched his generations while the mountains blew away into dust. I will be here when he is gone, and I will sit in a throne made of his progenitor's bones. I knew you arrived before he did, but the time was not right until now. What do you want from me? You misunderstand, boy. All I could ask from you is to stay out of my way. Since I understand your memory is impaired, I offer you one piece of advice. Don't go trying to find it. It's true what they say, and it's far too great a burden to bear. Don't concern yourself with these squabbling mortals. Break free of this prison and find a forgotten corner of the land and live your life in peace. If you don't, all you will know is war. Pointless, angry, sad, bitter war. But you don't have to be a part of it. Sounds perfect. All the answers to my questions, but I can't get out of here, Gia said, steeling his face. It doesn't have to be complicated. Imagine the peace of solitude, or risk getting blood on your hands. This world will bathe you in it if you aren't careful. Your time to leave will come. When it does, you must flee. Cast this all aside, and you will not need your memories. You will not know hunger or conflict ever again. That's too good to be true. Find out for yourself. Don't be a pawn in their game. Leave me alone. If you get involved, you will only know pain. Leave me alone. Gia reached for his aura, slashed his arms like he would clap them together, but nothing happened. He already forgot about the engraving. The purple figure laughed. He laughed until his chin pointed up. Then the sound grew distant, and the ashen figure crumbled away, leaving a pile of fizzling embers that glowed purple until it went cold. I'm going to try to look for the bookmark I was using. It's right there. Same color as the table. Makes it hard to see. So I don't know if no one's watching or if I just don't get to see who is watching or how many people are live when I'm streaming on my business or my author account. But if no one's watching, that's fine. I can still upload this video later. People can read it, watch it if they don't want to read the book. Still get to hear me do some lame voice acting to try to bring the whole thing together. It's also nice to rest my eyes from looking at the paper and kind of look up at something else for a moment. That was one of my favorite parts of the book to write. I think you can kind of tell. This isn't, This villain here is not my favorite villain to write, but he's probably one of the most interesting to write dialogue for. And that does make him more interesting to write. that'll develop as time goes on. But his speech that he has with Gia there is probably one of the most fun things that I have been able to write in this book, just because it's, I don't know, it feels like a bigger character exercise, and I get to kind of express a unique sense of villainy that I would not otherwise write. There are other antagonists that show up throughout this book series, but they're not like him. They all have different natures. That's something I'm trying to do with this book series, is have each villain that shows up have a different nature to them, have their goals and motivations be different. So it's not like, I don't know, I got really tired of in Star Wars this kind of idea that it's always Darth Sidious. It's always the Emperor doing the same thing over and over, just being powerful and wicked and not actually having a real plan. I mean, his plan came through in episode 3, and it was interesting to see how his plan unfolded, but it was the same plan every time. It was just kind of get rid of the Jedi and take control of the galaxy. But like, what happens after that? Like, he's always going to get defeated as soon as he takes over the galaxy, or, you know, tries to defeat the rebels, because there's no story after that. I'm trying to take a bit of a different angle than that and try to make the villain's goals more, not more grandiose, but more complicated, in the sense that their end goals are not permanently achievable, or they feel like they've already won and they're just trying to maintain their hold on things. And that's kind of how Emperor Ornka is in this book. Is he already feels like everything belongs to him. He feels like the whole world is his. This is just his garden that he's weeding. I don't know if you can hear that, but there's a train going by. I think I have it in me to read maybe another chapter, another section. Yeah, actually that'll finish up scene 1, so I think that'll be good. I hope someone comes on at some point to see this. I feel really foolish having made a blog post to advise people to jump on and then no one did. I know it's not everyone's ideal thing to do on a Friday evening, to listen to someone read, but I don't know. I figure more people are available on Friday than on other days of the week. But this is part 8. It is entitled Breach. What? Gia heard someone calling his name. He had been asleep, passed out on the dirt floor. Aqua was waiting just outside the cell. You didn't break the seal yet, did you? What time is it? Time to break out of here, Aqua said through tight jaws. Already? Gia's arm tingled hard while he reached for the knife that he had buried in a pile of dirt. We don't have much time. Aqua squeezed the wooden cell bars. Gia went right to work, grinding at the engraving with the knife. The screech it made was unpleasant but necessary. The engraving was shallow enough that he was soon able to cut through the outer circle. That's some of the enthusiasm I miss. A bit of you's come back already. Aqua sort of chortled, then suddenly went quiet. Gia sawed a little more, then looked up at Aqua. Gia, what is that? That's a torch, Gia said, and went back to sawing. A soldier dropped it in here. Did you see him? Aqua asked, but Gia just wiped the sweat drops that gathered on his brow. Gia, you saw him, didn't you? He came to you, just like he did me. Gia dropped the knife and hissed in through his teeth while rubbing his palm. Gia, I need you to know that I'm not lying to you like he did. He showed himself to me too. I know I can't make you believe it, but please, from the bottom of my heart, your destiny is greater than whatever he told you to do. That was the Emperor, right? Please, promise me that if you break out of here, you will follow me. We need to find your brother. If we can find him, we can find the other one, and it will all make sense. You still haven't told me how we're getting out of here. Gia switched hands, but stopped before scratching any further. We don't have time for this, Aqua grunted, and untied a clasp that held his robe up by his chest. The whole thing slid off like silk to show Aqua's bare chest and thick woven trousers. The boots Gia had heard walking down the tunnel matched the sound they made. They had riveted braces around the soles and plates of metal woven into sections like large fish scales. Then Gia saw what he should have seen from the beginning. The aura around Aqua's body was strong. It was pure and light blue, like the sky, the brightest right up against his body like a sunburst. The aura swelled around his hands, which he held with the palms out, fingers together, and his index and middle fingertips touching. His aura flowed so freely that Gia doubted Nova could summon up as much. It all made sense. Gia ground the knife blade into the engraving until the two of the circles were joined by a haphazard line. He looked up when a drop of his sweat fell off his nose, and instead of hitting the ground, it floated up toward Aqua. He turned around when he noticed a dull droning sound, like 1,000 horses galloping at once miles away from him, getting closer. "To one side, please," Aqua said, and his eyes closed, and water swirling in a disk in front of his palms. Gia wasn't sure what he meant for a moment until the entire dungeon rumbled with a roaring sound. It now sounded like a waterfall was just far enough away that its direction was unclear. When dirty water droplets squeezed through the stone of the back wall, Gia got up and flattened himself against one side of the cell. The rumbling grew into quaking, and the stone wall started to sag, then gave way. A jet of water the size of an old oak trunk blasted the rock and dirt aside and headed straight for the priest impersonator. But instead of washing him away like a leaf in a river, it stopped, balled up around the prison cell door, and at the lift of Aqua's arms carried the door off its hinges. Another wave of Aqua's hands and a throaty groan made the door and the stream rush down the tunnel. Aqua dove into the stream, and the water resumed its natural course. The water was already up to Gia's ankles when Aqua jumped into the stream of water. As his shape entered the liquid, he became something else. It was long, scaly, and had sharp claws. He could mistake it for nothing else. Aqua turned into a shimmering blue serpent dragon. His tail wrapped around Gia's ankles and pulled him into the water. Gia would have held a hand over his mouth to keep his breath inside him, but the force of the passing water held his arm back. They were moving so fast, the sound felt like it was exerting pressure of its own on Gia's ears. He turned his head every direction he could, but couldn't find any source of light, either beside, ahead, or behind them. Everything was dark in the underground river, so impressively dark that doubt flooded his chest. He was more sure each second that they weren't going to get out on time. Gia's lungs burned for air, and felt like they were being squeezed in at the same time. He swished his head back and forth like a frightened dog, searching for light or some other sign that they were almost out. Against his will, more air seeped out of his lungs until there was none left. He counted the seconds in his mind as he resisted the urge to draw the water in his breath. Just before he could have given up, the dragon pulled him directly upward. The two shot straight up out of the water. The serpent dragon evaporated into Aqua's normal human body, which held Gia by the ankle, then let go at the apex of their ascent, 6 feet up into the air. Before gravity took him back down, Gia watched Aqua flip and dive back in. Gia hit the water hard with his hip and back and sank. He kicked as hard as he could for another opportunity to refill his lungs. He burst out of the water and cleared his eyes to see the surface of the lake, glittering like a giant glass pool around him. He coughed water while paddling for the shore. On dry land again, he looked for the dragon in the water, but saw Aqua back in his human form, standing on the shore. "I hate you." Gia spat out a bit of what he had hoped was just seaweed. I almost ran out of breath, and you almost let me go a few times. I could feel it. That's harsh for someone who just broke you out of prison. Aqua chuckled while wringing the lake from his trousers. You could have warned me to take a deep breath at least. So you forgot everything and you're more angry than shocked that I just turned into a dragon? I've seen a lot of weird stuff in the last month, so I'm not really that surprised. Maybe it's not even that weird. I can't remember enough of my past to even know what normal is. Maybe I'd usually be flying and jumping between planets on a whim and talking to the trees. Maybe that's normal. I don't know. Gia, you could... Never mind. Aqua squeezed the water out of his long, wavy hair and threw it back behind his shoulders. So, what'll it be? What? Gia pounded one temple with the soft side of his knuckles to stop the static crackle in his ears. I can only urge you so many times to join me in finding your brother, and then I have to let you make your choice. Aqua folded his arms, already appearing dry, and Gia realized he was casting water off him from his head down. That's generous of you. Gia twisted a pinky in one ear, hoping to dig some water out, but nothing happened. Convincing, too. Unfortunately, I don't know how to trust you any more than anyone else. Then I'll be here waiting, Aqua said. Tell me why. Why what? Why did I forget everything? Here. Aqua reached out, one hand, and his aura flashed for a moment, and all the water on Gia washed off. You look cold. Let's get you warmed up, then we'll talk. Aqua threw his large, boulder-like arm muscle over Gia's thin shoulders, and they headed into a thicket of trees for wood to build a fire. Within minutes, Aqua brought together a pile of branches and wood chips, and used flint and steel from inside a pocket of his pants to light the fire. Smoke was rising out of the bundle of dry leaves he started the pile with, when Gia felt he should speak up. None of this makes sense. I woke up in the middle of a dried-up swamp, days away from civilization, and now everyone is fascinated with who I am, and I don't even know who I am. I even had an emperor from a distant land crawl out of a torch to speak to me. I can't believe I'm so popular when I can't even tell you where I'm from, but you could. Why won't you? Why wouldn't you? Why don't you try me one of these times and see if I will believe what you say? You have a hard enough time trusting me as it is. You're like a child asking for a slab of steak when you can hardly hold down a drink of milk. Gia just sat there, looking as hungry for Aqua's words as any piece of food. I can tell you you're an angel until I pass out, but you won't believe it. There's 4 of us. You, me, your brother, and the 4th one. We were sent here on a mission. Well, Gia asked, what's the mission? You don't know, do you? Listen, no, come on. Don't tell me you don't actually know. You impersonated a priest, broke a man out of prison, and now you're going to sit there and lecture me about what I need to do with my life? What gives you the right? It's not like that. You should be more confident in me than ever, knowing that my memory's been affected too. Then why don't I know where I'm from? Why don't I know I have a brother? Why can't I make heads or tails of this entire world? I don't know what I'm doing here, and you don't either. Gia, I can tell you this. You have a great destiny. The Emperor wouldn't be working so hard to try and dissuade us if he didn't know how powerful we are. Just think of what it takes to show himself to us. It's not simple magic. He must use up a sizable fraction of his power. Okay, maybe I'm guessing on that, but please understand me when I say that we have an important mission. I know that as sure as I breathe. What is our purpose? How do we accomplish our mission if we don't know what it is? Your brother will tell you. How do you know? I've never met a wiser man. You can't get many words out of him, but he's a genius and an incredible fighter. He was powerful, swift, smart, and unstoppable. If anyone can get his memories back after forgetting everything, it's him. Up until I talked to you, I thought we would all be given some important memories. I'm sorry you didn't get any, but I'm glad I can be here to help you find them. Aqua looked up from the fire, to see Gia's eyes had been pointing down for some time. But if he doesn't remember anything just like me, maybe you're the extraordinary one. And you got the special treatment. How will we find him, if he even exists? We have to look. Where? I don't know. Then what's the point? Gia stood up, turned his back, and rested his hands on his hips. If we don't get out there, we won't find him at all. We can't expect him to come to us, especially if we are hiding. If he's so smart, smarter than either of us, wouldn't it be best to wait for him to find us? Ha! No, he's stubborn. If we don't find him, he won't give us the time of day until he knows he needs us. We don't know yet when that will be. Gia sighed hard. It wasn't the first time he had done so in that conversation. You know what? The first time I got a memory back, it was by touching the water for the first time. It was just a fragment, but it came back the moment I dove in and turned into a dragon. I may have touched you as a dragon, but we haven't yet made physical contact person to person. My dragon form is just a representation of me. Give me your hand. Sounds stupid. Please, Gia, just grab my hand. Aqua took his gauntlet and underglove off. A bit of a wipe against his outer leg, and he presented it to Gia's back. Well, why not? Gia faced Aqua, held his hand out, but kept it close to his chest. He breathed in, held his breath, and grabbed Aqua's hand like a handshake. The world around Gia melted away. He was on a different plane for a few seconds, watching colors in great splotches race past him in every direction. The thing that appeared before him pulled his attention in as it got close. It was like a massive book. It was twice his height, and its pages fluttered open in front of him. The pages got close enough that he could reach out and grab one. The pages roared, and the wind fluttered his hair and clothes like he was being pulled through the water. Sorry, there's a train going by. His hand remained stretched out like when he grabbed Aqua's hand, and the pages kept turning as if they had no end. The edges of the pages nearly touched the tips of his fingers. Gia splayed his fingers and extended his elbow until it locked. The pages whisked by, thousands in a single second. They were soft as if the pages themselves were worn to a fuzzy edge. He could grab any one of them as they went past, but one of them was solid red. It reminded him of Nova, so he closed his fingers on it and pulled. Gia collapsed onto the ground, almost hitting his head on a stump. Aqua lifted his head back up and was saying something, but Gia was too stunned to understand much of anything. He realized Aqua had been talking, but "What do you remember?" was the first thing Gia understood. My brother's name is Seiju." "Yes," Aqua said and gave a happy sort of yelp, then gave Gia a hug while the amnesiac lay in his arms. That is the end of scene 1. So Gia is starting to get little bits and pieces of the memories of his past life. Things are starting to come together for him finally. And that was another fun scene to write. It's actually a scene I added very late in writing the book, just because different aspects of the plot came together at different times throughout the writing of the book. So having that be the function for Gia getting his memories back was something that I added later on, and I really like it. I like the visuals of everything, of kind of pulling memories from someone else, like pulling pages out of a book. Since it doesn't look like anyone's joined on to this while it's live, probably because I'm doing this on my author page instead of my personal one, I'm going to end here. I might go on to my regular, my regular page and read some classics or something, some classic literature, just because I have more time tonight than I usually do. But it's been good to read again. There's been some of my favorite parts of the book to read. And sometimes just getting over my own nervousness and just doing the reading is what really helps. So thanks for anyone who does watch this. I appreciate it.